This here is my first generation Mazda 3, which I bought over 3 months ago now. I've had lots of people asking me to do this video, so here it is. I'm not actually going to review this car in this video, I'm simply going to explain why I bought this specific example and what I've done to the car since I bought it. Let's roll it back a bit first though. As you can imagine, I spent a lot of time weighing out which car best fitted my criteria. To start with, I really wanted to get a Mark IV Golf or Bora. However, they're a bit old, not very well equipped, and finding a nice one for decent value for money was quite tricky. I was even looking at the Audi A2, but although the insurance quotes were very low, I thought the maintenance cost on a rare car such as this would be extortionate. At the end of the day, I booked to see 3 cars. The first car I went to visit was a black Citroen C2. It was the cheapest car I went to visit, costing only £2,000. It had done around 50,000 miles and was on a 59 plate. The good things were low insurance, high fuel economy and really cool styling. The example I was looking at also had extensive service history. However, it was woefully impractical, had quite a high clutch on this particular car, and generally didn't feel like a very substantial vehicle. The second car I went to visit was the only car being sold by a private seller in High Wycombe. It was a 59 plate Mazda 2 for £3,000, and it had done just over 30,000 miles and had excellent service history. Without seeing the third car, I would have more than likely bought this Mazda 2 actually. It was well under average market price by around £1,500 and felt far faster and more substantial than the Citroen C2. The only problems were a very poor rear legroom and an interior which felt quite plasticky. The next and final car I went to see was the Mazda 3 of course. Funnily enough, I hadn't even considered the Mazda 3 until a few days prior. I made the assumption that the insurance would be well out my budget, but when I did some quotes it was only a little bit more expensive than the far smaller cars I was looking at. When I went to see the car, it wasn't exactly a sparkling sight. It was covered in dust and dirt, and it also had very poor bodywork condition. However, when I got inside, the condition was immaculate, and after taking it for a spin, it drove great as well. The car is actually based on the Ford Focus, so this makes sense. It was far more practical than the 2 prior cars, with lots of headroom and legroom in the back, whereas it also has lots of equipment and felt by far the most substantial and well built car I went to see. It had done just 50,000 miles and had only 2 owners from new. The only other bad bit, apart from the bodywork, was the fact it came with no service history. The problem with cars such as this is when they're traded into the Mazda dealer network, they often just discard the service history because of the value of the car, and the fact that they're not actually retailing the car. It's the small used car dealerships which do, like the one I bought it from. I am in no doubt the car did have service history though, because the MOT history is great, and it had kept the interior in great shape. The car was listed for £2,395, which is well under market price, likely due to the absence of service history, and the fact they wanted to get rid of the car as soon as possible because it had limited space on the site. After getting home, my opinion was set. I wanted to get a Mazda 3. Specifically, I wanted to get the Takara spec, which is the one I bought, or the Tamura spec. Both of these models have different exterior styling to the lower spec TS and TS2 trims, plus they benefit from more kits such as electric rear windows. The engine would have to be the 1.6 as it's the best trade-off between performance and insurance. Of course, it had to be a manual as well. The only other lingering question was whether the exact Mazda 3 I went to visit was the best option or not. I was hoping I might be able to find another one with better bodywork condition and some service history. However, it turns out the Mazda 3 suffers very badly from rust. I knew 90s Japanese cars were very prone to this, but by 2008 I thought most of the rust problems wouldn't be such big of an issue. Turns out almost every Mazda 3, that's a lie. Turns out every Mazda 3 I went to look at on Auto Trader had corroded subframe as an advisory item on its last MOT. I couldn't find a single example of the right mileage under £3,500 which didn't. Fortunately, the Mazda 3 I went to book seemed to be alright, from the MOT history that is. Just to make sure, I booked to see the car again, this time under a ramp to check the underside, and somewhat to my surprise, it was perfect underneath. This ultimately sealed the deal, as it had everything I wanted apart from the bodywork and service history. I was very happy, but there was one final thing that sweetened the deal. For an extra £250, the worst of the damage on the car was fixed. This included a completely buried sill plus a badly dented wing. For £250 it was a no-brainer. The only other things in terms of bodywork left on the car were a few small dents on the door and the boot, plus a few scratches here and there. A lot of the lighter ones were actually removed with a bit of T-cut. The final price of the car then was £2,625, which I think is considerably better value than the Citroen and Mazda 2 I went to see. In fact, I would not even recommend buying the Mazda 2 at average market price. It simply seems very expensive for what you get. Since buying the car, I've kept monitoring prices, and it does seem like I bought the car just at the right time. After learning the Mazda 3 was based on a Ford Focus, I also did some research into the Ford Focus, in top spec gear trim that is, but I don't think they look anywhere near as good on the inside or the outside in the case of the Mark 1. However, I'm very happy with the car I did eventually buy. It's been mostly clean sailing from there, apart from one incident. A few weeks into buying it, I found out the central locking didn't work on one of the doors. I was checking to see if the car was locked, and the left passenger door opened with no fuss at all. All the other doors worked though, they were all locked. After me and my dad took off the door card, it turned out the central locking system in that left passenger door was completely smashed to pieces. My best guess is that the door had damage to it, and a garage which repaired it did a lazy job and didn't decide to repair the central locking system. £45 later on eBay and £60 later in the garage, that fault was all repaired though. The next thing I had done was putting on a new wing mirror. Although not essential, the old wing mirror was badly scuffed and also had a bodge job done to it which prevented the wing mirror from being closed in. Anyway, it was an easy fix and only cost £30 or so. For my birthday, I also got some new number plates. The old ones are really badly cracked and didn't have the UK emblem on one, which is needed for going abroad, unless you have one of those ghastly huge stickers on the boot. I also got a few accessories like a 12V to USB adapter, an auxiliary to lightning cable, and some safety stuff like a high-vis jacket for the boot. The most recent addition is a dash cam. It's a front and rear setup which records at a really high quality. Me and my dad hardwired it to the fuse box, which means it also has 24-hour monitoring. Taking off the trim to hide the cables was a fairly simple task, and the hardwiring wasn't too bad on the driveway. Overall, I have no regrets buying this Mazda 3. It fills the brief perfectly. If you want to see a review of the car, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it when it drops. And I'll also try and get some footage from the dash cam as well.